Okay, we're live.
Hi.
Hi. So really hot, very still,
Yeah.
which is good for my
Yes.
solar drawing, so I'm not unhappy about it. Um, okay, Okay, so today we're going to talk about Orang Asli because
Yep.
we just published a good basic guide to the Orang Asli, which is which is good because even I didn't really know. I mean, I needed you to kind of get the thing going and like flesh it out a bit, but so now
Yep.
it's a little bit clearer about just how many tribes there are,
Yep.
uh, where they're kind of laid out geographically.
Yep.
Um, I now have a sense of like, okay, they sort of have three three main groups, which also sort of defines their provenance. One group they think came down from the north. One group is the oldest, and then one is the Proto Malay, the closest to the local Malay community.
Yeah. So why it's darkening out? Okay. Yeah.
So now that we have a basic, we can sort of weave around it a little bit because it's actually a little bit of a complex subject. Um, and there doesn't seem to be any real authoritative source that's really. Or am I wrong? I mean, that's what my sense is. There's no one place to go to get like all the information about them. You know?
I don't know why am I
Okay.
turning the screen off. Okay, I'm just gonna keep touching the screen then. Yeah, I think yeah, there's no reciprocatory a place to get all this information besides Center of Orang Asli Concerns.
So
Mm,
there's a what is it JOAC? What's that?
Jakwa,
Oh,
Jabatan Hal
JACO.
Ehwal Orang Asli.
Okay, so that's a government agency, right?
Correct.
And is there Orang Asli representation or is it governed by like local, non
Uh, okay, so for the longest time, most of the elected officials or a lot of the officials, the government servants, were non-Asli. However, now I think there are some, maybe less than 10%, who are
okay.
actually Orang Asli. And even then, they tend to be more Senoi because they are the larger group, the Porto Malay group, and they tend to have a lot more communities that were adopted into government agencies, meaning like their fathers were cops or in the military, or they lived very close to what now are towns or highways. So they have been they simulate more comfortably into the Malay
Okay.
lifestyle.
So they're a little bit more modernized, is that what you're kind of saying? Or just more assimilated into society?
Lifestyle change, I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe they converted to Islam, or yeah.
Other groups, are all the groups coordinated? Do they come under one? Do they have like a? Uh,
Hari Orang Asli Sedunia, where a lot of them participate and
okay.
um they celebrate it together, or they go to a particular village. So they take turns to host this in different villages
From
across the
from
country.
different tribes? Are there
Mm,
different tribes? Oh, okay.
yes.
Okay.
So they're working very hard, at least in the last 15, 20 years, to um amongst themselves know a little bit more about each other and about their spaces and challenges, because it is easy to come across Orang Asli communities which are doing land rights uh,
Advocacy?
contesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
they're doing advocacy around land rights, and so that was initially the main reason why they got together. You know, communicating with each other to say, okay, these are people we trust. These are people who've helped us with like um identifying the coordinates of our boundary of our traditional land. These are the people who actually help us find lawyers, or these are the people who help us raise funds. So over the years, it came from this place where they were fighting for something. They still are in a lot of cases, especially with logging companies and stuff. But they've
Right.
also the younger generation have also got into a space where they are exchanging information. So I know there are like 3 orang asli radio
Oh,
stations.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you hear all sorts of music that,
Okay. Okay.
heavy metal, you hear
Okay. Yeah, that's
like
interesting.
dangdut-ish style music. So they do have quite interesting music scene going on.
Okay.
Some of them in recent years have started to broadcast a lot more about um getting married and stuff, like, hey, okay, I got this job and I'm working here, and like, if there's anybody there who's from the
Yeah.
same background. So it it's gone through its like different, I guess, opportunistic phases. It's quite
Right.
nice because like some of them have become quite funny because if you listen to Malay radio stations, you do have a lot of this like very Malay humor, like a lot of it's like dad jokes. So you get a lot of that, but asli centric. And then when
Right.
people started making those Instagram reels where this is how I say this in Malay and this is how I say this in like Bidayo, for instance, and it kind of sounds the same. So they started making content like that. So I think there's also new ones like you mentioned, Digital Dome, which I
Yep.
think are not all Asli. They
Yeah.
are of Asli culture and tribe values, but
Yeah.
I think the initiator, the creator behind it is not a Malay. Not an Asli. I think he's
Not
from
all not.
Malay.
No, okay.
Yeah. So which is great because
Some elements of the culture sort of float to the top. So, but digital dub is one which I sort of come
yeah.
across. Another one is an artist called Shak Koyo, who's also an
Oh yeah,
activist.
yeah. He's Asli. Yeah. So Shak
Yeah.
is a friend of mine, and he draws hyper realistic
Yeah.
uh
Yeah. Very cool.
murals.
Very cool work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Shark's done like huge building size paintings of like indigenous people, and actually it's not just Shark, yeah. It's him and his brother Jamal. Both of them are really like, yeah. It's like they yeah, their art's really beautiful, and it's very tasteful as well.
So I will put a link to these because it's quite good to sort of, access, elements of their world, so to
Yeah,
speak. And
yeah.
these are the only sort of little doorways. I've also come across, I bought a book, uh, and it was someone collecting maybe culinary stuff, like
Yes,
and doing
Asli,
watercolor.
like yeah,
So you have a little bit of an insight into their food, which is also
yeah.
quite interesting.
So
I'd love to see more of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Lim Boon Liat, Malaysia's first zoologist. Um, he worked with the Asli community for many years, many decades actually. And part of that was to observe animals. So he used Asli as guides in the forest and to keep himself safe and, um, injury free. So I remember talking to him sometime after COVID. He's very old at the time, and he passed away maybe 2023 or something. And he wrote a little book about animals from the Orang Asli perspective. And so he lists about like, I think, 8 to 10 little animals then, and how the orang asli perceived why they look the way they look. So one of it was the tapir, and why the tapir is black and white with thick skin. And it's because he was such a bully that he got drunk at one of the weddings that he attended, that the rats came out and painted him black and white. So it's very interesting how they look
Okay.
at,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
this animal
Yeah.
looks weird. This guy's got this animal's got this kind of like attitude, and we would like tell stories about it. And another guy named,
There's actually not a lot of literature about it, right? I mean, I can't say I've seen a book about, like a basic guide to their culture or stuff like that,
no, it's very,
right?
you get maybe small chapters in like, say, the national park guide. It talks about the particular tribe living in the state park, but you don't get
Um,
one that has a compilation of the various tribes. So it's still very underwritten and under
Yeah, which is a shame because for example, when I did the Penang uh
literature
literature,
festival.
yeah, I was I was actually the moderator for a group, and one of them actually was a writer who was partly indigenous,
Okay.
and she talked about something really interesting about how the forestry department was partnering with the Australian Aboriginal
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
about fire control, you know,
Yes.
because
Yes. Yes.
actually
Yes.
they have a very traditional way of managing,
Yeah.
fire.
Bushfires. Yeah.
So these are the kind of things I wish we had more content about to
Mm,
understand. Obviously, we've said it in the article.
yeah.
It's good to help them maintain their status because they are great custodians of the forest. But I think we could get some better content about what that actually means. What are the practices, so
Yeah.
that we can, just learn a little bit and also learn about our world, our
Our
natural
prejudice
environment.
sometimes. Yeah.
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 So when I
Okay,
was in
so let's
Belum,
let's talk about that because that
yeah.
sort of leans into some of the problems they have,
Mm,
which are kind of sort of uh, did a broad outline. But actually, just today I was looking up, and there's another issue which is statelessness.
yeah.
They have a problem with statelessness because
Yeah.
they're just not going on record, which means they have problems with getting health services.
Mm,
They don't have IC. They don't have ID.
mm,
Then there's marriage issues.
yep.
If it, so the statelessness is an issue, which I guess is uh, I don't know how that's being handled.
Okay. So from my experience in Belum, when babies are born,
Yeah,
the hospital wants the babies born in the hospital because then they can
sure.
say that this child was
Mhm.
bared by this Asli woman from this village. There's no contesting that, you see. The challenge is this: the typical Asli woman will not be able to come out from the village by herself. So she's coming out with her parents, with her husband, with her children, with her sister. So it's a small little village coming out for her to deliver in the city or in town, like Greek town. And so they have this transit hospital accommodation where your family can take up a small dwelling with no furniture. It's just an empty room with a window. And they all stay there and they have to figure out how to eat and all these other things while they're out there. Like you and I, if somebody went to the hospital, we would just go out and buy food. But they don't. They bring their chickens and they cook. They because they bring their pots and pans. So it's a little bit of a it's
Yeah,
good because they're
rather.
nomadic, right? It's good
Right.
because they're nomadic and they know how to move their home for this temporary stay while the person is delivering. But when you now make them stop being nomadic, they don't know how to be nomadic anymore.
Yeah.
And then they're in this like awkward phase where they become beggars in town while the mother is
Yeah.
delivering the baby. So that's one. So some of them don't want to deliver in the hospital because they feel it's such a burden for the whole family to be displaced while they are delivering. The other thing is with Belum, it's very far. It's very expensive because the boat ride, the diesel, all that, builds into this receiving the baby. However, the department that registers them, the registration department, always thinks ill of the community members who give birth in the village because then they say, how do we know you're not Thai? Because the Jahai people travel between Malaysia and Thailand and their language, because they are the purest of the Jahai community, they do have some Thai dialect in their language because they're
Oh,
family of both sides, right?
wow.
So then they're a bit fucked. And it's very unfair because now you deny not just their identity, you also deny them their citizenship. So the babies, if they are not registered within I think it's like 12 days of their birth or it's, a minimum of a month of their birth, or the kind of questions that they get asked, the parents get asked is really it's really bad lah. It's very unfair
right,
being
yeah,
prosecuted that way.
yeah,
And then on top of that, when they want to name their children like more traditional names, they get like, looked down upon. And then there's a lot of misspelling and it sounds different. And there's so many identity problems. However,
right.
a representation where
That's
there's an
sort of
interpreter at the police station where they're registering the name or at the registration department. And this is the problem because they're not represented. They don't get to have that conversation. Yeah, it's dignity lah, Yeah.
so yeah, because that is so there's an associated problem with that because they're not assisted, in a way they they need assistance to live their life, but be able to connect with some of the requirements that help
Yeah.
them to like their statelessness issue and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And but some of the problems that are related with that is they become targets of interest by political bodies,
Yeah.
by religious bodies.
Yeah.
And for example, I visited the Saleta community. So the Saleta, and then I want to hear about uh, your experience with the Jahai, but with the Slater community here, I mean, there are some recurring rifts about their experience. One is they keep getting moved, you keep being pushed,
Yeah.
out of what because of development or something like that. So when I saw them, they had just been pushed, I think, for like the second or third time to some site near the Johor River, and you can see a sense of displacement. You know, the site isn't coordinated. They have no potable water.
Yeah.
Water is being brought in by trucks in a big thing.
That's
They you- they don't have good garbage, so there's a lot of garbage because the
so basically
waste
they're living in a
disposal.
ghetto. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, and then also they're in a low income class, so they're eating poorly. They're
Yeah.
eating, and you can tell by the weight they're eating very poor quality fast food and stuff like that. So that is also affecting their health. I mean, this is something
Yeah.
that we see in other countries too. Like I've read about Australian. That's an issue that they have there. The Aboriginal community has a lot of problems with obesity and alcoholism and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so that's an issue. And then okay, so that particular thing, I went to this thing because I went with someone else who had been asked to go and help them with uh, rainwater harvesting.
Right.
Okay, so we go there and I see, and they had something, and they just kind of like just put it together.
Yeah.
And our sort of quick evaluation was, okay, you just need to do this.
Yeah.
This. And then I sort of walked around the corner, and they had exactly all of that equipment just thrown in the back. So that one had been given.
Assemble.
So that one had been given to them by Barisan Nasional, and then this all new one was given by DAP or PKR or something like that. And so they're all competing to help them.
But they're never helping solve the root cause. They're all dealing with
Right, right. Or they're not empathic
Yeah.
to the issues.
Yeah.
Same thing with I've been on other things where clearly it was it was a Christian organization, and the way they perceived the problem was horrible. Like they thought that they were dirty, and when the thing is, and I think related to that is also there's issue with the way they dress, their modesty. I mean, all this stuff, which has nothing really to do with them. It has to do with some other party's perception of these ideas.
Yep.
They're trying to impose on them, and they try to impose on them in return for their help.
Yeah.
Which I find kind of really disturbing.
Yeah.
So, I'm a bit conflicted. I don't know how I feel about that. Because from what I've read, I mean, technically the general idea is you're supposed to leave them alone.
I mean, so
That's
you've got NGOs like this company called or this organization called OA Green, where they have been teaching. So basically, they're all ex-agriculture people working for the ministry or working for some private agriculture company, and they've gone in and they've worked with specific groups of Asli, and they've done vegetable growing, and now they sell the vegetables at Jaya Grocer.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. They wrap it up in the leaf and all that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then they have like some people who do chicken farming and goat farming with Asli community. Chicken farming easier because chickens are much they're more familiar with chickens. Goats are a bit harder because they try to do a couple of goats for each family, and then they have to track which goats mate with which goat. Therefore, you know, the succession doesn't cross into the same family lines. So that one's a little bit harder, but there are people who've done this. Some people have brought in rabbit farming. That's a little bit harder because they can't eat the rabbits, and won't slaughter the rabbits because they're too cute. So rabbit as a protein has failed, not just in the Asli community but across the country. Rabbit farming was a thing, I think, in the late 90s, and then like it just never took off. Yeah.
You know, another sort of side hustle that they do, and I know this because uh, through one of my somebody I used to buy some plants from, and he had some really interesting jungle type plants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then so he had so I said, where are you getting this from? And he says, oh, you get it from the Rasta because
Yeah.
actually they're allowed to take this from the jungle. You know,
Yeah, but
you
they're
know,
not allowed to like sell it out
sell
there,
it.
you know? Yeah.
And the same thing
Usual
with
policy.
my brother-in-law is an avid orchid collector.
Right.
He also quite often, so they live in Ipoh, so
Right.
he quite often will go up the Cameron's route to see what these guys are bringing out
Yeah.
buying. So this is another thing that they do. But I mean,
Yeah.
it, you know, if they could figure this out, it could be something useful. You
So
know,
that's why the forestry department started working
yeah,
with them for social forestry. However, when you talk about fern, they're harvesting the whole plant and they're selling it to you outside.
okay,
When the forestry department is trying to regulate them through growing timber species, they are collecting wildlings, which are like that small, or seeds, right? And they are meant to raise them for a couple of months, if not a year or two, before they can resell them for replanting. And
okay,
before you replant a plant, you need to harden it for transport. You need to
yeah,
harden it for planting in the field. So there's multiple stages of the process. When the cost effectiveness of these programs are not properly done, you and when you buy the tree for very cheap, the cost of their labor is not equivalent to the
yeah.
cost of
And I think that's a
the
central
product.
problem because
Then
people
it becomes
they take advantage of this. You know, they
the
want it.
math
You know,
doesn't work. Well, basically, the
yeah, they
math
just
doesn't
want to
work.
short circuit this. They want to get it.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's
Yeah,
complicated
and then
about
you
that.
get people who are trying to do tissue culture of like forest species, and then it kind of like you then it's like, why are we doing this project anyway? If you're just gonna put tissue culture, you're putting one clone out. You know, you're putting 100 clones of the one tree. You know, so it doesn't build resilience. You know, it's just that it's just easier to manipulate the plant
Mm,
availability anywhere. So these are the kind of things that are like not well thought of in terms of
yeah,
creating alternative income for them. Yeah.
yeah.
So
I
a
mean, you
lot of
know,
Asli people actually can play really or not, probably not this generation. Like in the previous generation, a lot of them were very highly skilled with, like, for instance, making things out of bamboo and rattan, making poison for darts, make collecting tree sap for boat sealing and boat repair.
yeah,
A lot of them could make musical instruments. They could make
yeah,
carbide lamps. They
yeah.
could do a lot of utilitarian stuff. Yeah, they were
Yeah,
really
but then also,
important.
you know, this is a whole world of valuable stuff. I mean,
Yep.
you know, there's medicinal stuff, you know, that they, you
Yeah,
know,
for sure, for sure.
the stuff that they know and, you know, that
Yeah,
we can kind of figure out. It's culinary stuff because, you know,
yeah.
no one's really looking into how they're eating and
But
how,
yeah.
you know, whether that's good, you know, how that works well for them. That, you know, that
Mhm.
kind of thing is kind of really missing here. So that,
So
which is,
culinary wise, I feel like we've done a lot of work with Ashley during like flooding season, and we've sent supplies and stuff. So we've eaten quite a lot of like bushmeat that is smoked. So they tend to, when they go out hunting, if they hunt anything small, they tend to smoke it and keep it,
Oh,
and then they'll make it into like a dish that's like a curry or like a kuah,
oh,
and
is
then
it
they
nice?
smoke it
Have you
to cut. Pardon?
you've eaten it? You've eaten
Yeah,
their
yeah,
food?
we've eaten civet cat. I think we've eaten python and something else.
Wow.
Yeah, but they
What
only
is
cook it for you when you go, when you're like doing a supply run, and then they serve you a meal. Yeah.
what is it like? Is it like Malay food? Is it like this region's food, like curry, gulai? Is it that kind of
Okay,
thing?
so the more traditional families, they don't even have onions. So it's
Uh,
really like a soup
which is
with
actually
like,
a foreign thing. Onion's actually a
yeah,
foreign
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not a
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So the younger generation cook with onions and curry powder and stuff like that. The
Ah,
older one is basically salt. The smoking has a smell, and then the buah kulai has a flavor. So there's some fruits like forest tree fruits that have like certain kind of aroma that they smash and they coat it with, and then they bake bakar. Bakar is like, what is bakar? Bakar is like grill
grill,
on an open
like
fire.
barbecue. Yeah.
Yeah. So if
Do
they
they
don't
make
smoke
like
it,
like what the Thais call it jungle curry, which is just like a watery, it's just like a watery stewish with a lot of like uh, maybe a protein and different kinds of jungle vegetables and things like that.
so you get a bit of like sweet potato in it, or
Ah,
a yam.
okay.
Usually what they do with the yam is they grate the yam, they wash the yam, they boil the yam, and it becomes like a grainy, like rice but not rice. So it's all odd sizes, and
Like
yeah,
yeah, I know what you mean. Like
like
a
sago like
meal.
that.
They call it a
Yeah,
meal. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Okay.
it depends on the community that you're eating with. It's a little bit different, and some of them have hill paddy and a little bit of pulut. Pulut is glutinous rice. So then
Yeah.
it depends how they're preparing it.
No one's done like a program about it. I would love to watch like a film about this, right?
I think if there was, it wasn't produced locally, and it's probably not done by a local person. There's a lot of
Uh,
French who come and record this kind of stuff. Yeah, like when I was doing research on rimba, I was working with MIT out of the US. And when they came, I brought them to, there's this guy named Raman Batuin. He's a Asli guy based in Gombak. I've known Raman since I was like a teenager. And I knew his wife, and I know all his kids and stuff. And he plays the nose flute. So he's very famous for the nose flute. So I brought them to watch him and play the nose flute. And he makes nose flutes for Japanese people who play flutes in Japan, or do research around flutes in Japan. So
yeah.
he's quite famous as an individual, but within the realms of which people seek for his skills. And MIT actually paid for him to draw and paint like a three-story storybook around their belief and why they do certain things. So yeah, and then MIT paid for it to be scanned and paid for it to be reprinted in a smaller size, because he drew them in like art block size, and then so we scanned everything, we shrunk it, and we
Is
put
that
it
available
together.
anywhere?
I need to ask Raman, because this is like 2015, 2014, quite a way back
Mm.
lah. And
I'd like to return to that, but before I do that, let me just finish about the slates up.
mm,
Because I have my small amount of firsthand
yeah,
interaction with them is uh so so they're like on this edge of modernity where they're
yeah,
there's the locals, they're being pushed into houses, and then the
yeah,
local political community are trying to get their votes, so they're trying to give them stuff, or they're
yeah,
trying to get them to convert, and so they're you
yeah,
know so in return they're forced to do these various things,
mm,
and then there's obviously some smarter ones, and they form relationships with Chinese businessmen and open
yeah,
restaurants, seafood restaurants. So Johor actually has got JB's got quite a few of these sort of waterside restaurants, which are sort of co-owned by Orang Asli and
It's like your Red Indian casino.
I guess. I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but see, that's the thing, right? This making indigenous communities convert into a different religion, making them denounce their belief because we feel it doesn't sit right with us because we are
Sure.
culture. This is all the stories we tell ourselves without
Yeah.
recognizing that actually because our all tradition is oral tradition, right? You think about the way the blacks learned the Bible. They sang it. They couldn't afford it. They couldn't read it.
Yeah.
So they sang it. They sang it in church. And that's why singing is such a huge thing in those churches. And you think about Islam. Islam was a religion where the nomadic tribes in the desert would travel from nomadic tribes, okay, in the desert, right? Now we have nomadic tribes in the forest and we don't like it. Okay? Second irony. So they would travel from one area to another area, herd their sheep, right? And they would congregate and they'll meet around a fire and they will tell, oh, the Prophet said this, or the Sahabat did that, and the Khalifas are managing budgets this way, or these are how this is gonna happen. So you think about that model of communication and you look at an indigenous community's model of communication, it's the same. Did women get to make any discussion in the Khalifa environment of these nomadic tribes? No. They heard it from their husbands and their brothers and their sons. Same thing, orang asli community, same thing. But the question is, do you feel the women were indignified by the men making decisions? No. There was respect for their wives and their daughters and their sisters
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So their interest was cared for by the male in the family. It didn't mean their interest and their point of view never got to the table.
Sure. Sure.
It was represented well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the indigenous people have the same thing too. They do in its traditional form, unpolluted by, our false Western
Sure.
maturity cycle concept
Yeah.
pushing people. They do take care of the women because at the end of the day, the women are the ones who are preparing all the items for the rituals. So if you don't have the materials to run the rituals cannot happen. The witch doctors tend to be women or have a more feminine expression because they have to be caring, they have to be motherly, they have to be aware of your condition over time. So when you kill the culture and you bring in external religion, you are stopping them from building their, there's one culture, one group, I can't remember what their group is. They are in Tasik Bara, and if you have a really bad toothache, they will build you a small little statue of a tooth monster, and then he will do a ritual and he will tell you to go and bury this tooth monster or place it somewhere. And once you do that, the pain goes with that little idol.
Okay.
And they do this for all sorts of illnesses. And it's really interesting that, the metaphoric, pain, maybe this is like what you call mind over matter, that you believe, that this is going to happen and it heals you. So for whatever intents and purposes, they have systems of, their culture has evidence of all these things.
Sure. Which is universal. I mean, like in traditional folkloric medicine, it's like if that plant looks like a body part, like if it looks like genitalia, it's used for sexual
Enhancement.
function.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And I
it's
think
kind of like
coming
that.
back to what you were saying about the Seletar people working with the restaurant owners and stuff like that, I think if they have a fair, equitable share in the business and it affords them a decent life, income, then I think it is a model to replicate, because if it works, why break it, Maybe there is an unfairness about it, but like in some of the communities I've worked with, they raise chickens, but they don't eat the chickens because they consider the chickens their pets. So what happens is they bring the chickens that they don't allow under their house. So they have like a chicken house or like an area where they keep the chickens. those chickens, when they reach a certain age, then they'll bring them to the shop, and then the shop will slaughter and facilitate the process. Because
Right.
if the chickens are not slaughtered, then the Malays won't eat them. If they send it to a Chinese shop,
Right.
then the
It's got to
Chinese will
be
eat them. Yeah,
Timberlake,
they, it
whatever it
doesn't
is, right?
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a that there's that as well.
Right.
So usually the Chinese shop owner or the Chinese restaurant who buy it from the
Figures that
Asli,
out. Yeah.
they are very careful that the chickens are of a certain age, of a certain weight when they buy them, because they want, when they sell it in their restaurant, they say this is free range kampong chicken. So then they get that market value of having orang asli raised kampong chicken. So you have this kind of it happens, but it's not a consistent equitable relationship. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, but okay, so in general, they are animists basically all across all the tribes. If
Yeah.
they're not converted, they're generally have animistic pagan type
Yep.
ritual. Okay.
Yep.
And how much under threat is that by conversion? Is
I
it quite
I
high?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I feel like the politics that you mentioned earlier does force them
Sure,
into
sure. Yeah.
being Malay,
I mean,
or being
a lot of times
Muslim.
they're tricked into it, even, right?
But you have to understand, life is so harsh. Even getting
Sure,
58 is money, getting their
sure,
kids to get a scholarship, go to school is,
sure, sure,
is
sure. Yeah,
valuable.
yeah, yeah.
So they get sucked into these schemes that then,
Right,
render them
right,
attached for life. Yeah.
right.
I mean,
Oh,
if they just convert to Islam and they still do their own thing, and like I know this Pachi who he makes little darts and arrows, and he just uh uh basically hunts tupai. Tupai is
squirrel.
uh squirrel. Yeah, he hunts squirrel, right? So a Muslim person would say you can't eat squirrel because you didn't slaughter the squirrel. The death wasn't a slaughter.
Oh,
Technical, right? But
what's
the
that
Pachi
mean?
goes, no, no,
Oh,
I'm
oh.
Islam, I'm Islam.
So
But that's
hunting
the
is
only
not
meat I can get.
you can't eat a hunted animal?
You can hunt it. It has to still be alive when you slaughter it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Slaughter is a requirement. Even the Jews have the same requirement.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where I feel like eating kosher is so easy because, they follow all the same rules.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's like,
Okay.
so I know Asli people who on paper they're Muslim, on their IC it says they're Muslim, but really they just live whatever lifestyle that they need to live because that's what's available to them. The
Okay.
only thing is that when they are forced to go to like the masjid, and they are forced to like fast, and they are forced to bury in the rites of the Muslim way,
Right.
then you see they become very confused what are they actually practicing, because the
Right.
rest of the time they're left to their own devices. Yeah.
Mm.
So then
So
there's a spectrum now of how religious they are. I also know Asli people who wear the purdah, which to me was like, I'm like, okay. It's
and
really not.
and then they're also let's talk about the governance of it. So they're covered under a 1950s Indigenous Peoples Act, right, of
Yeah,
some kind, which is actually now facing some kind of
change.
update. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas what the update is? Like, how would it
I
affect
don't know
them?
the updates, but what I do know is when the British ruled Malaya, they put the indigenous people under the Wildlife Act because they looked at it from, remember we're talking about how they have access to bushmeats and forest products. So they were governed under that Flora and Fauna Act because of that access. So there is a
Mm.
lot more written about indigenous people in that act than anywhere else. And then there was the 1957 Jaqua Act, which defined that they were cared for under this ministry, who then covered at the time all their medical, all their health, I don't know, all their medical, all their how to say, education, and the land issues. And then since COVID, when the government changed, the government removed healthcare
Oh, I didn't
and
know that.
something else from Jakwa into the
Wow.
main system. Because when you were distributing COVID aid and COVID, what do you call that,
Vaccinations and
vaccine,
stuff like this.
yeah, it had to go directly under the Ministry of Health. So in a way, that was better because now they are full citizens, right? If they said so, if we are all together as citizens, and then they are represented by a government
But there's
department,
still
and
this issue that if they don't register, they're stateless, right? So there's that
correct,
difference.
registration is the how to say, is
Yeah,
the key into the door. Yeah,
yeah. And you're
but
saying
same
that
with
the
the
only
zoo, right?
people that are actually uh, advocating for them there are government agencies and not NGO type agencies.
So say that again.
So you're saying that the people who advocate for that, for example, like like Tanam who runs Jewel,
Yep,
one of her main things is actually stateless children because a lot of like this is like a this is a leftover from the colonial rubber. When they're just sort of in the they're born in and grow up in the rubber plantations, they don't
yep,
bother to go and get their paperwork done,
yep, yep,
and
yep, yep,
they
yep,
end up as adults with no papers, and then it becomes
yep,
really complicated.
yep,
Uh, but
yeah,
so what I'm saying is, so there is this agency, Jewel, who is actively trying to help them fix it.
yep.
There is no NGO doing that for this.
So among the Asli, they have this organization NGO called Jaringan Orang Asal, and Jaringan Orang Asal is made out of different members of the indigenous community in
Right.
Peninsula and Borneo, Malaysia. And so they have been training kindergarten teachers. So that was one of the first things that they did. They trained kindergarten teachers so that within certain villages they would have like access to education for young early childhood education, so that mothers would learn how to play with their kids in a way that they can interact and communicate with outsiders. But again, the intention, right, is because to want to communicate with outsiders. But this was also the entry point for supplement medicine and supplement meals. So this was a collaboration with the Ministry of Health. So if you're below 3 years old, you get food aid. So you get like baby formula, and you get baby formula, and I think breakfast if you're under 5. So the idea is every month, so a woman in the village will gather all the moms who have children between newborns all the way up to 5 years old. They will record all the kids, they will record all the mothers, and they will have they will be taught how to weigh each individual and track that they come and they get all their supplement food. Because remember, some of them, although they have a house in the village, they will still travel out for like 5 days, a week, and then travel back in. So while they're away for the 5 days, they wouldn't have collected their free meals, right? So then they will track the weight gain or the weight loss when they are away for that few days. So then it evidence that the food supplement actually work. And this is because sometimes the nutrition of the mother is very low and she
Sure.
doesn't have milk and she can't provide the right kind of food for the kids. And or the kids get sick and they get dehydrated or whatever it is. So there's there's these things that happen between the uh, Jabatan Kesihatan Health Department with the community in that particular locale. And then all of these women, after managing other mothers and other children, they scaled up. I think in early 2000 to become kindergarten or early childhood educators. So then there's a whole bunch of them who do this in the kampong. And so it's an unpaid job unless an NGO comes in and funds them and brings in like toys. So like the Toy Library Malaysia provides toys and creates these little libraries where they learn how to play imagination
Right.
games, or they learn how to, they get building blocks that they can play with, and then the kids will go and bring like wood or sticks or rocks and add to this collection. So then the teachers who are trained, they also get trained with so there's early childcare education and pengasuh. Pengasuh is like a babysitter type training. So this allows them to take care of, like, you know, if they get bites, if they get rashes, how do you tell whether it's a rash or it's chicken pox? So then it helps them help the mothers increase the livelihood of their children, because sometimes they just die when they're out there. They didn't know that they had pneumonia. You know, they know the kid is sick, but they didn't know how serious the illness is. Is it just a cough or is it pneumonia? Is it just a fever or is it dengue or malaria? So then these women who do the food aid, who become the early childhood educators, also are taught a little bit of like medical care observation, so that they can then ensure that, you know, as many kids that need help get help. They also do this for very old people. So sometimes in the village, the very old people, you know, they lose their teeth and they don't eat and they die of starvation, not because of their body actually failing. So
Right.
people like Gerai OA, like Rita, loves all these old people because she will go and visit them. She'll go bring coffee and stuff like that. So she, in every village, will know who are like the top 10 elders in that village, who are like, you know, in their 70s or their 80s, and very few of them last to their 80s. So most of them kind of like they cross over and like mid to end 60s. They are considered live long when they're in their 70s, and in their 80s, they're like the OG. You know? So Rita will know all the old people, and then they will have some small program like medicine box. So they will have like everything from like pain relief plasters to Panadol to gastric you
Right.
know solutions, and all sorts of little like medical stuff within the villages that Gerai OA operates. So that's kind of how people kind of trust Gerai OA over the years, because they offer these kind of added assistance, which is self-governed by the community. So you remember the conversation we had about free informed prior consent? It's
Sure.
really designed around self-determination. So indirectly, these two projects I just shared, the health department and working with the women to make sure the kids are receive nutritional support, and the Gerai OA concept of offering them a medical box, and they pay. It's not free. So if they take any medicine from the medical box, they're supposed to pay a certain amount of money
Mm.
based on the price. So they get like the, if I buy it for 50 cents and they pay 50 cents, there's no profit made of this medical box. It's just that
Right.
it's very expensive for them to travel out of the village, go to a pharmacy to get the same medication. So it is basically bringing the pharmacy to them. So these two projects really support the value of self-determination for the person who
Yeah.
becomes
I
the
mean, this is
coordinator, as well as for the village.
yeah, this is sort of my conflict with the thing because I mean, from a just from an abstract intellectual point of view, from the things that I've read, the best idea, the best practice is to actually leave them uh to live their old ways. You know, they have their
But they
own
can
way
do this
of.
from the forest, where
Sorry.
all these resources are available.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but what happens is that's not the world anymore. They're on the edge of the forest. They're interacting with city life, and then they're open to things like COVID and
Yes.
uh, dengue, and so then they need intervention by traditional medicine and stuff like that. And the only way that happens is if there is some kind of advocacy. And then this is where I get to my conflict: is that you can't leave them alone. So I guess you have to bring them to school because
Yep.
some of them have to become educated enough to help their community, right? That's
And some of
the
them are. Some of them are.
yeah,
So a
yeah,
lot,
yeah.
they go to school, they leave at like say form 4, form 5, and then they feel like they need to earn an income, because immediately when they work at like 16 or 18, they get
Yeah.
jobs for like 1,007, at a motorbike repair shop, for instance. But the thing is, they never upskill over time, so they'll just be stuck at 1,007 for life. And some of them, the factories from Penang will go into a place like Great, and then it will do an interview of like say 50 to 100 local kids from the areas, and then they will promise you accommodation, meals, salary, clothes for the job. They will go and they will work for these factories in Seberang Perai, and basically it's literally like a sweatshop in some cases, and they get like a measly 500 ringgit, which sometimes they don't even know if they have it, because they end up spending it by borrowing money for supplementary food, or they get into smoking cigarette. Some of them get into
Sure, sure.
alcoholism because there's
Yeah,
no adult asli person in that space giving
yeah,
them good advice to navigate this new
yeah.
life. And then you also
Yeah,
have the ones that get
I see
taken.
I see the
Mm,
corollary to this in the Rohingya community because I've
yeah,
sort of worked with them for quite a while, and a lot of them came from a very rural place, so they're illiterate. They're really just uh they have small. They're growing their own food, catching their own fish. That
yeah,
is actually and then very few of them will be educated
yeah,
and come from slightly richer families, so they know a bit
yeah,
more. So when they come here, those are the ones that rise to the top of their society here. For example, Osman is one of them. Osman and
yeah,
Hafiz are actually the two ends of my two ex-workers were
yeah,
two ends of it. And then when I had a bigger group of them, what would happen is someone like that Osman would be a leader.
yeah,
You could
yeah.
literally, like, if I was explaining something, I would explain it, and then everybody will look to that guy
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see
yeah.
what that
But
guy has to say about it.
this is the same sampling of
Yeah.
everybody else in the world. Every
Yeah.
group will have the
Yeah.
same dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know I've not really interacted with the or enough with the so I really understand that situation. Which brings me to your tenure at Bolum, which is, what was the specific reason you went there? There was
Uh,
a very specific
so I worked for
thing.
the Conservation Assured Tiger Landscape. That was the certification that Royal Belum was trying to attain. And that certification came through WWF. So I was hired by WWF to be in the landscape to work on the community portfolio for that certification. So they've done everything else. They've got good governance around wildlife rangers. They've got good governance around their policy. They had a good state park plan. They had everything. The only part that was missing, the only component that was missing was the community element to the whole process. How do communities participate in conservation, and what are the communities' perceptions and beliefs around tigers? So that was my work for a year and a half.
I also remember you saying that there was some issue about the rules had changed or what they could hunt, and you need
Yeah,
to have a conversation with them about that.
yeah. So
Explain that again to me.
they can eat everything, anything they can hunt in the forest, they can eat.
Okay.
They just can't hunt it and sell it outside. So, for
Um,
instance, the
which they were
messer fish,
doing. Which they
yes,
were doing. Yeah.
survive, right?
Sure.
So the
Sure.
messer fish is a protected species in Perak, all across Perak. But
Hmm.
as soon as you hunt it and you sell it outside and you're caught with it in your car or on your motorbike, they will not just take away what you have caught, they will also summon you on top of that.
Hmm.
So in some cases, they would have caught like, 5 fish that would the income will be like 300-400 ringgit, and it's all gone. And I in a way I feel like the system kind of fails, because what happens to that fish? Do you just chuck it out? That's 400
Right.
ringgit worth of fish.
But who wants to buy that fish?
Oh, it's very it's considered premium fish.
So I mean that's a problem here because that's a silly kind of cultural thing that
Yeah.
there's a value in these exotic things, and it becomes like a rich people want
It's
to
not
have
so
these
much that
things.
it's exotic, that it is actually delicious. So
It
there's
is.
these two fish that look very similar to each other.
uh,
And they are always in the same area. So if you find a tengas, you will find if you find a tengas, you will find a kelah. They are
right.
always swimming together, and the probability of catching a kelah in a school of tengas is 1 to 5. So local people eat tengas. They sell the kelah, but for me, I've eaten in the community and I've eaten both, and I feel like I really like the tengas more. It's just that Kelah has the it's
So
a
these are
salmon.
river fish. These are river
These are
fish.
river fish, yeah.
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 All right. So let's now talk about one an area that interests me, which is the cultural area.
Yeah.
So for example, when I interact with a Seletar, I kind of learned that they don't really have a very strong cultural drive. They are fishermen. They have a life at sea. That is their culture.
Yeah.
Whereas whenever I go to like craft shows and whatever, the most of the work is done by the Temia. The basket weaving. They make beautiful things. They definitely have a much more of a cultural drive to make things like basket.
I think
Uh,
it's because the Seletar,
yeah.
um, I don't know how true my understanding of this is, but I remember mm in Singapore they recognized that the Seletar were one of the initial inhabitants of the north half of the island, and although they have no place now in Singapore, but they
Yeah,
recognize
they
that.
they were pushed out of there. They were pushed out
Yeah.
of there. Yeah.
So the history of the Seletar is that their kingdom was they're seafaring, right? And then they would have
Sure.
a base. Like if you think of it from a pirate's perspective, they would have a base where they hide all their treasures. So Singapore was that place, you know. However, when they no longer live in Singapore, their sense of place is not as strong, and also the way the land is owned in Johor, they never have a long enough stay in a place. And
Mm.
to a large extent, they were the ones who fought and defended the kingdom of Johor, but they were never recognized for it. So in some ways, they feel so disenfranchised that they just accept the fact that they're transient, they live on the water, and they only build what they need. They never build more. They never build for permanence. And that's what you see the difference between the Seletar and the Temia. Because the Temia tribe is also much bigger. And the Temia
Mm.
people are they're land based, right? They are almost
So
hill people.
they grow things. They're agriculture, a little bit agricultural
Yes,
too.
so they're agricultural, so they have a sense of place. They also are like one of the more prominent hunters. So if you look at Tamiya crafts, they have masks, they have
Yeah.
armor.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
more
You start to
aggressive
see
about
the
hunting.
connection to the region. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the carving, the
yeah,
weaving, the
yeah.
the grass mat.
You know that
That
they
quite
have this
interesting.
really cool wind chime. They put it
Mm.
right at the top of the tallest tree, and it basically, when you hear a helicopter coming in, whoop, 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 whoop,
Mm-mm.
that's the sound it makes when
Oh,
the winds are strong. Yeah, so that
interesting.
demarcates their
Like a
boundary.
warning, lah. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you
Yeah.
come closer to the village, you will hear this whoop, whoop, whoop sound, so you know you're
So
entering the land.
so what about the Jahai that you were working with in Balloon? What did they do?
The Jahai are basically, they are very timid. They are the smallest I feel in build compared to a
Oh,
lot of the other ones
interesting.
I've seen. Also because their terrain is very rugged, and they
Okay.
are how to say, they're always hiding from all the wildlife. Like they will tell you, oh, that's like got sun bear, turn around. Oh,
Go go
that's
there.
like got elephant, run away. They're like
Okay.
the dormouse
I kind
of
of like
the
that. It's avoidance.
yeah, but but when they talk about the tiger, they're so animated about that is our ancestor telling us that we need to be aware of this and that, and then they go into this conflict about, I'm supposed to be aware of outsiders, but then outsiders are giving me food. How do I reconcile this difference? So you can see the conflict for them is it's survival versus deep belief.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And either way they go, right? Nobody's putting food on their plate. They still have to work
True,
for it. They still have to
true.
claim it. So it is harsh lah, I would say. And when I work with the women, say, how do I explain this? Imagine your jalan was wisata. You are considered wisata hulu. You are at the top of the hill. Somebody who lives in the center of the hill will be wisata tengah, and somebody at the end, at where you enter from the main road, will be uh, wisata ujung, right? So a woman from wisata hulu will never get on a boat with someone from a different part of the wisata
Um,
because they are not her family, and they are not people that her father will trust with her, unless he says, okay, this so and so is going to take you from this point of the village to that point of the village, of the river to that point of the river. So although they're the same, that you're on the same road, the sense of care is different.
Mm.
And so when we worked in what's the name of the village? Oh my god, the name of the village escapes me. So when we worked in this village, and I was trying to organize for the kids to be sent to a kindergarten nearby, but run by Orang Asli as well. We had to find a boatman from the same village to gather the kids and send them with the teacher to the school site. And we had to do all the budgeting for all the fuel, the allowance, how many children were getting food, and all of that. So when we work with the outside world, everything's very rigid and very very squared out. But in the community, we're like, oh, but there's just one extra kid, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. But then, it changes our insurance. It becomes very tedious to do. So it's really hard to get funding for these kind of projects that then allow them to have a lot more independence. Like so there's another group of people called Souls 24/7. They work with more exposed Orang Asli villages. They work with a lot of work away foreign individuals who teach English in the village. So as this volunteerists, they go into the village and they teach English to kids of any age, and they live within the village and they get like a stipend for their food and stuff. And Souls 24/7 is the coordinator for this program. So you see them a lot more in villages that have more access to like roads and running water and a bit of electricity, even if it's intermittent. But they have a little bit more infrastructure than like a Belum site would have.
Right.
And
Right.
in Belum, the Orang Asli wouldn't let you stay with them. Like you have to know them. You have to be hiking with, like hunting with them before they let you stay in the village. Yeah.
So what was interesting was when I spoke to Heng and I asked him, well, what projects are they working on in the future? And he said that one of them was the Orang Asli. They're actually investing more sort of thought into that, which I thought was quite
Yep.
interesting. But I think their angle is that the Orang Asli they're the conservators of the forest. So they,
Yep.
in helping them, they actually are helping the forest.
Yeah,
So
because if they don't have anything to eat, if they don't have income, why
yeah,
are they safeguarding the forest?
yeah,
They're gonna be taking from the forest before they can
yeah,
preserve it. So you need
yeah,
them to have a solid baseline before they can
yeah,
then invest in caring for the forest. Yeah.
yeah. And then the other sort of the other modern sort of thing that is of interest, which could be good for them, which is actually a negative for them before. Like I just saw something that was posted, about from a historical angle, and it
Mm.
was actually about the first account of them in a Portuguese, uh, some Portuguese writer in the region in the
Mm-hmm.
1640 or something like. I can't remember what the date was.
Mm.
Um, and the descriptor is that they're heathens. They're wild. Which is actually, that was the thing then. Then it was about that whole 16th, 17th, 18th century idea of, that's what religion was. Religion was about turning heathens into civilized, modest people, right? So this was this very negative narrative about them. But now in the 21st century, the idea of wild is actually is interesting. From
Yep.
an
Yep.
intellectual point of view, we are now interested in wild. Like, what's wild medicine? What is wild food?
Yep. Because we're
Uh,
trying to re-establish our place on the planet in this,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
So
you think about it, right? If you look at, like, we all grew up reading Tarzan or watching
yeah,
Tarzan the movie, right? So you think about Tarzan mimicking chimpanzees, apes, or whatever the animals that were around him. That's one person. You think you imagine 50 Tarzans living together. That's to a large extent Orang Asli. The intelligence
yeah,
of a
yeah,
face, the ability
yeah,
to mimic sound, the consistency of following the weather and the climate based on the atmosphere. And like since we've been sitting here, it was clear sky. It started drizzling. Now it's turning dark. This is the sea. Ta-da!
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
It's changing. It's ever changing. So if you are indigenous person living in the elements,
Yeah.
you are so attuned to all these things. And then you think about Tarzan. He knows when to hunt for what food and when to eat what fruit. So
Yeah.
these are all
Like just
intelligence of the
personally,
earth.
just my interest would be I'd be so interested in it botanically.
Yeah.
Uh, then I remember once I went up to Cameron's with Howie, like the guy that used to work for me, and they were selling fruit on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. I mean, I think if like all the fine dining chefs could figure out a pathway to this,
Yeah.
it's like wild, like a wild rambutan. It was, the really interesting things
Yeah.
that could be someone would pay money for, then
Do
it
you
would
know
be,
that some of them believe that you can't harvest certain fruits because they believe in coexistence, yeah? A lot of all the
right,
cultures,
right, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
so
It's
they
about
believe that
a
if
balance.
it's
Yeah.
of a certain height of the tree, it's not meant for you. It's
Yeah.
meant for the animals, you know?
Yeah. That's something they could teach us about
Yeah.
sustainability, right?
Totally coexistence is like one of the main things. So if they make a mistake,
Yeah.
like the Jahai, right? If they make a mistake, they will cut themselves and they will throw blood. And that's just part of their ritual. And it's quite
Right.
amazing because it's a taboo to talk about the taboo. And so you have to observe them all the time to figure out like, okay, he did that. He definitely did that for a reason. What happened before that? And I'm like in my head calculating like, what could he have done? What did he offend? How is he making amends by doing that? And
Right.
sometimes I can only ask that question like weeks after it's happened. So then it's like, that time we went hiking with Ahmad and we went through this road and then we saw this and that. Like he did this particular thing. What was that about? Then sometimes they will just laugh at me. Nothing lah. Don't worry lah. Then I find out that it was an area that was a burial site, or it's an area where they feel like you can't take certain plants, so they have all these
Yeah, I mean, we don't really
embedded
know
in
very
their.
much about
Yes,
them. We don't know very much. And for example, like maybe I know more about Australian indigenous because I've read more about,
documented.
like dreaming and
Yeah,
the way they capture it artwork. There's more information about that. Whereas
yeah,
it seems like a very obscure thing here, even though they're quite close,
yeah.
it's
Physically
yeah,
close, but totally
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
explored.
Okay, we did an hour, so we can wrap up there. I think it was quite interesting. We sort of talked around it.
Mm,
We had some base information. This sort of fills in a little bit of some edges. Yeah.
yeah. There's one more thing. I had a few kids that who see me all the time going into the village, right? And at this point, I was already starting to get some gray hair. And I remember this kid coming up to whisper at me that, "What color is one of my WWF colleagues' hair?" Then I asked them why. They said because in the village, people's hair change color over time.
Okay.
But when they wear the tudong, they can't tell your age. So the kids are so mind blown by this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they see, they are very literal, right? They learn
Yeah.
by observation, and
Yeah.
there's so many things that we do, living in our Western culture, outside world, that
Yeah.
we take for granted, that we don't realize that we may not offend them, but we make them wary of our presence.
Yeah.
You know, like just
One last thing that we didn't cover is actually words. There's this like why orang asal and orang asli? Why isn't there like I mean I don't understand why
I guess
one.
that is their self-determination aspect, because they
So what do
found
they
like the
what
word
do they want
a
what
bit
do they want to be
derogative.
called?
Pardon?
What
Asal.
do they
That is the current like understanding. It's like you remember we had this conversation. You said something about Latino and Latinx.
Yeah, yeah, it's a sort of a similar idea. So
Yeah,
you're saying that the orang I keep saying orang asli, but they actually want to be called orang asal?
correct, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because they
I'll
feel
look that
like
up and see if I can put a link about it because I think that's interesting. The
yeah,
other thing that I think is worth mentioning is actually uh the fact that some of the names of tribes are actually used as slurs, you
Yes.
know, and so there is actually some documentation about that, you know, because
Yeah.
some minister said it in parliament, and you know, it caused a big uproar. And I noticed when you wrote that preliminary thing,
Yeah.
you called the is it the Sepoy or the and not the
It's
Sakai?
Jakun and Sakai. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't use
Yeah.
the word Sakai, which is considered a slur because
Yeah.
it in Malay it's used to describe someone who is like, I don't know,
Rowdy.
uncultured or yeah,
Yeah.
or wild, which is like, you know, which is what they are, you know, which is
I
actually
mean,
wrong.
if you think about it, right? If you look at
Yeah,
the Maori haka, the
yeah.
way how
Sure,
aggressive
sure.
that is,
Yeah,
and the sound and the facial expressions and the movements, you would think to be threatened, right? And the
yeah,
Sakai probably had very similar physical and first encounter responses,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that was what stuck, you know, and
yeah.
that was
I mean,
what later.
my thoughts about slow words are, for example, Eurasians. You know, I'm Eurasian, and one of the slurs is grago. They use the word grago.
Lemon, yeah.
Have you heard of that?
I have not. I don't really understand the terminology.
Okay, so they use the word grago because actually it relates to the Malacca Portuguese fishermen who are poor
Oh,
fishermen,
the
and
coastal fishermen. Yes.
they catch the grago to make the belacan, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so they call them grago, you know, which is
Yeah.
considered it's in a way sort of intimates that they're poor fishermen, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I have no relationship to that word. I have no I can't relate to it.
Yeah.
However, so my thing is always okay, so what do those fishermen think? You know, because
Yeah.
I will go with whatever they think is if they don't want to be called that, they shouldn't be called
Yeah.
that. Then it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
slur,
Yeah.
you know.
It's part of the self determination.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thing.
And I think that is maybe something that suddenly in our lane is bring that kind of information
But
because
you know what's interesting?
yeah,
The millennials and the zennials may just make a T-shirt that says Grago, and they will just own it.
yeah,
They might own it and turn it into a brand and make it
so,
into a rock band, a metal band, and
yeah.
even
Well,
copyright
as
it.
long as that millennial is an Orang Asli or a
For sure.
Eurasian or
For sure.
whatever, then
For sure.
fine, then
For sure. Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
these are rather complex rules, which, but I guess there that this is the rules of engagement in society. I
Yep.
guess you know,
Yep.
and I think we should, you know, we should have the
I
skill
mean, for
set
me
of,
as
you
a
know, we should
hybrid
have a
kid,
basic
right?
understanding that we should navigate it. You know, the other one is
Yeah.
the Indian community and the K word, you know,
Yes.
and how, you know, it's not a nice word now, even though there's always this argument, but that's what it was used to describe them, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's actually embedded in like Chinese dialects,
Yep. Yep.
you
Yep.
know, so there is a banana called the K banana,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No,
and,
there
you know,
is
if you actually say
this
anything about it,
food item
that,
that you get from the pasar malam is the little round little donut, the very sweet, very crispy one that they fry. It's a tiny fella. They call them telinga Hindu and stuff like that. And I'm like, what does it have to do with the religion?
yeah,
It doesn't even look like an Indian person's nose. Like, where did this come from? But it's delicious and I love it.
yeah,
But it is a mark of it's a mark on our timeline and our
yeah,
ignorance and us
yeah,
progressing as a people. So I
yeah.
feel like recognize it for what it is.
Yeah.
Don't stay there. It's 2025. Move on. Give it a new
I
name.
I went for lunch once with Tanam, and it was like a Peranakan restaurant or something. And we ordered some stuff. She said, "Oh, we don't have this, we don't have that, we don't have that." And I said, "So okay, so what do you have?" And she said, "We have bihun." And then she used the K word.
Okay.
Okay. And I was like, "What?" And then, you know, and Tanam said, I was like really kind of mortified by this. And then after a while, I realized it's because she couldn't pronounce Kering.
Ah, yes. Short
So I
tongues.
had got myself into a tizzy actually over nothing,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. Yeah.
because I was so concerned that she might be concerned about it. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
like, so sometimes these are sort of modern
Yeah.
sort of ideas
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
can
yeah.
maybe get over fixated about. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
No, I also because we're trying to not offend.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Okay. On that note,
All
good to
food's
talk
good
to you.
food.
Actually, your view is really pretty today.
Today, yeah, it's not so bright outside. That's why. Yeah, and
But
then
where are you? It looks really nice. You're in some kind of like veranda or something.
so that's the room. Ta-da.
Ooh,
And
nice.
that's the beach.
Ooh, so
So
nice.
today we have only like two guests in house. So instead of leaving them to themselves, we've moved into one of the units just to kind of, not let them be so lonely here. So just
Okay.
in case anything happens, we're on site. Yeah.
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 Okay. So we'll be in touch and do our next. So Sunday we're gonna have a Zoom meeting, right?
Yes, Sunday.
At 6 o'clock. Okay. All right.
Okay.
We'll talk to you
Bye.
then. Bye.